Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident fanalist, as always, Ryan Schlip. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_daddy. So today is going to be day one of digging into the Chicago Bears. Obviously, we've done a little bit of this, kind of talking in passing about certain players, mostly as far as, how good or bad, or comparing in the NFC North or whatever. But I want to kind of top to bottom this thing, looking at primarily the roster. Not a massive amount of news and notes, and we're not going to be laughing at the enemy part 2 because the Lions ended up beating Dallas, as the Dallas hype was, in fact, pretty fake. The revamped defense looked like garbage, so there's that. Ask a Cowboys fan today if they won that trade. I wonder... I think when they had to give up draft capital to go back and get another defensive tackle, despite getting a defensive tackle in the trade with us, should have been a hint. Maybe the trade wasn't going as great as they expected. So the NFC North continues to be a bit of a bloodbath, and it's seeming as though this thing might go down to the wire. We'll see. But anytime it feels like maybe somebody might pull away, maybe this thing will happen or that thing will happen, It just refuses to happen. And again, even at the conclusion of this Bears-Packers game, obviously one wins and one loses, but there's another game coming up. So the possibility to split and being right back where we started is relatively high. In fact, why don't we actually start with that, because that's kind of an interesting point to bring up. As of right now, and obviously these things are subject to change, but as of right now, which is what we're interested in, as we know, the Packers are 6.5-point favorites in this game. The money line is set at minus 340 for the Packers, plus 270 for the Bears. That has a implied win probability of 74% for the Packers, which is relatively high, and 26% for the Bears. However, you then have Week 16 against the Bears. That's 1.5 points for the Packers. So that kind of shows, you can kind of do the math on what the home field would be, right? Yeah, it would be right at 2.5 points for the home field. Not that it has to be, that's the average home field between the two, would be 2.5 points, I guess, which checks out. It's close to 3, a little bit under. Anyways, 1.5 points for the Packers-Bears game at Soldier Field. The money line has Bears plus 100, Packers minus 120, which puts the Packers at just 52% to win that game, Bears 48. So if we did a little bit of math, the odds of the Bears sweeping would be 12.5%. It's great to hear, obviously. The odds of the Packers sweeping, 38.5%. The odds of a split, 49%. So, obviously that's, goes without saying it's subject to change after this week, because one person's odds of sweeping go to 0. So that's the first thing. But we shall see. What else we got here? Let's actually get to what I wanted to talk about. So as far as NFL news, something pretty interesting here. Kyler Murray apparently not going to play the rest of the season. He's obviously struggled with injuries for quite a while, which was a concern given his stature coming into the NFL. And now the 3-9 Arizona Cardinals are going to be without their starting quarterback for the remainder of the season. That's not great news for us. The biggest reason, not that there was ever really great odds, but remember the Rams are, aside from the Bears, the biggest team with the biggest target on their back for us. The Cardinals play the Rams twice still. So whatever hope we had of an upset in one of those games just got quite a bit worse. It's also a question of what's going to happen with Kyler Murray moving forward. Is Arizona going to be looking for a new quarterback? And if they lose out the rest of the season, they end the season with 3 wins. That's going to put them in position to be able to select a new quarterback, which they probably should, to be honest. Be looking at possibly moving Kyler. I'm sure there's some quarterback needy teams that would be interested. Maybe some guys that are a little bit later, similar to Minnesota, but I don't think Minnesota would do that. What do I know? But I that doesn't feel like, given that they have JJ, I think at some point you move on from JJ and you get somebody else entirely. Otherwise, you're probably looking for somebody a little bit more established and trustworthy. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe Pittsburgh if Rodgers doesn't come back next year. They seem to love just taking random swings at guys. Miami, possibly, if things with Tua go south, although you're kind of just left in the same situation, I think, with a smaller guy that's hurt all the time. Maybe as a backup. I don't know if that's what he's destined for or not. Jets, I don't know. In other pretty big news, Brian Branch, as you saw, he did end up getting hurt in that game in which they beat Dallas. But they ran some tests. Turns out Brian Branch tore his Achilles, and he is done for the season. So the team that just cannot catch a break with injuries, they do their best to try to overcome all the injuries. They seem to do a pretty good job. I don't think that they have the best players in the world at this point. I mean, again, on defense, especially when you factor in the injuries, I mean, they got Aiden Hutchinson and friggin' what? Then again, you look at what Dallas did to him and friggin' nothing, I guess. But that's not great for them. They're obviously still in the hunt. At the end of this week, they will have closed the gap on one of the two teams, either the Packers or the Bears. Potentially get themselves back into second place, I believe. Not positive what happens if Packers win, Bears lose. Don't care to look it up. Anyways, not great. We do have the injury report. It was released relatively early. I had mentioned, as far as the Bears are concerned, based on the Wednesday report, we weren't really going to know anything. Kyle Monangai, for example, didn't participate. Rome Odunze didn't participate, and that was kind of normal behavior, and usually by the next day, everything is ready to rock and roll. Turns out that was true of Kyle Monangai, but that's about it. Andrew Billings, TJ Edwards, Jalen Johnson, Kyle Monangai, Dominique Robinson, Noah Sewell, and Joe Thuney were all full participants. Ruben Hoplite was limited. Rome Odunze and cornerback Tyreek Stevenson did not participate, and all three, Odunze, Stevenson, and Hoplite, whatever, out. So again, we're going through the roster today, but just as a reminder, Rome Odunze is their wide receiver one. He's run the most routes on the team. He has by far had the most targets and is Caleb's favorite target. Most receptions, most yards, most touchdowns. So it is not a nothing situation here. As for the Packers, I don't have the Packers report. Probably won't for another 2 hours or so, but we do have some information on that. First of all, I don't think anything really relevant is going to come of the Friday injury report. And what I mean by that is the guys we have questions about, or let's start with this. The guys that are not playing, right? I have no reason to expect Lucas Van Ness or Savion Williams to be in this game. Wyatt obviously will be on IR at some point. So the guys that are just not practicing at all, they're not going to play. It's my expectation. I mean, Lucas Van Ness pops up in full and all of a sudden whatever, but I don't think so. In fact, I know that he wasn't. We'll get there in a second. A lot of these guys are going to be just active for the game. Of the questionables, I think they're all just going to remain questionable. So, for example, I don't think we're going to get an answer on Jaden Reed. When Matt LaFleur was asked about Jaden Reed or Matthew Golden or anybody else, the answer was essentially, yeah, we'll see. Don't know, it's up in the air, we'll see. I have every expectation that it will remain the case until kickoff. So I don't expect to have an answer on Matthew Golden. I don't expect to have an answer on Jaden Reed. There might be a couple that could be interesting because there's a billion limiteds, but I don't expect a ton of interesting information. The thing that is going to be interesting, although I think I know the answer to it, is Javon Bullard. This is a super unfortunate situation. He popped up Thursday on the did not participate list. He again did not participate on Friday. Now, according to Matt LaFleur, he's got an ankle injury. He said nothing from practice. It was from the game. Just was having some lingering effects, so we thought it would be best to shut him down and see how he progresses through the course of the week. So essentially, him not practicing Friday isn't necessarily a bad thing because that was determined after Wednesday. They said, let's just shut him down Thursday and Friday and see how it goes. For that reason, if I had to guess, I would say he's going to pop up as questionable, but it's possible he may just not be playing this week, as in like official game status. So that sucks. That absolutely sucks if we don't have Javon Bullard. I'm glad to be saying that, but it does suck. Matt LaFleur's comments on Javon Bullard, he said it's up in the air. Comments on Jaden Reed and whether he'd be ready to go, he said, hope so. Specifically on Matthew Golden, Matt LaFleur said he's done a nice job. I think he's gone out there. He's caught some balls in practice. Again, another guy that I think will be questionable leading up to the game time, depending on how he's feeling. So, again, I don't know that we're going to learn a ton. There's going to be a lot of game time decisions, and that's going to... first of all, it's unfortunate because that means that play or not, they're genuinely hurt. But it's going to make a big difference when we find out who's active and who's not on game day. Also just had this come across the timeline here via Tom Pelissero. Vikings quarterback J.J. McCarthy and running back Aaron Jones are both off the injury report and good to go for Sunday. Again, in my mind, that's good news. As criminal as it may appear, I'll be rooting for them. Maybe that's the wrong way to put it. Wishing that they are terrible and win. Maybe more accurate. But all right, that's all I got for now for news and notes. Why don't we take a break? We'll come back and get started on this Bears roster. Alrighty, let's get started with the quarterback position. Again, we've talked about this one quite a bit already, but Caleb Williams, very obviously the starting quarterback. He's in his second year. Again, I think the talk about his improvement is a little bit over-exaggerated. He looked like he was really headed in a good direction. The first 4 weeks, his grades were 68, 64, 72, 69, which is certainly not elite, but would be an improvement over last year, which was a 63, I'm talking about his passing grades here, 63 passing grade. However, he kind of dipped off after that, 42, 63, 60. Then he had an 85 and 76 grade, and so first of all, you look at that and think those are really good grades. Also, when you take the totality of the season now, you've got the 4 games and then the 2 games with just sort of these 3 games in between, but overall it's looking real good. Well, since then it's been 60, 42, and 59. And so now the good and the bad are about even. His passing grade now has only gone up from a 64 to a 67, so it's basically exactly the same. And the worst part about it is the 4 weeks that were almost considerably in the good category, not really, but let's say they are, were the first 4 weeks of the season. And so if you look at since week 6, Caleb's had 2 good games since week 6. And actually, if you look at it from last season, you say, yeah, but he's had these good games, and like he had those, the week 9 and 10, 85 and 76. His overall was a 91 and an 81. Isn't that really impressive? Week 6 last year against Jacksonville, he had almost a 90 PFF grade, 83 passing grade. Week 11 against Green Bay, 85 overall, 80 passing grade. Week 12 against Minnesota, 75 and 75 passing grade. Week 16 against Detroit, 83 and 80 passing grade. So interspersed between average to bad games, he had these 4 really good games. So far this year, at least games on that level, he's had arguably 2, I guess, depending on where you draw that line. 80 overall and let's say 75 or higher passing grade. He's had 2, and they were back-to-back. And the only reason his grade this year is, I would say, higher, despite having half as many good games, is because he's had less bad games. Last year, he had games in the 50s or lower, 1 to, let's say 55 or lower, because there's some high 50s that are basically 60s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games. And this year he's got 1, 2. He's only got 2. He had a 42 grade against Washington and a 42 against Pittsburgh. So I think the biggest, if there's any improvement, it's that he's raised the floor to about average, or at least has so far cut down on the terrible games. Now, he hasn't faced hardly any good defenses, so we'll see how that goes when he goes up against Cleveland. Maybe Green Bay, although Green Bay, by some metrics, have fallen out of the top 10 defensively. So I don't know if you can call us a good defense anymore. But overall, his overall grade has improved. His passing grade has improved very marginally on both accounts. And again, his rushing ability is his best ability. He has a 66 passing grade, but an 85 rushing grade. A lot of the quote-unquote improvement has been given to the offensive line. I think that's a little overstated. Not that I think the offensive line isn't improved, because it is. I think a lot of things around him have improved. The pass blocking has improved a little bit, although I think how bad it was last year was a little bit overstated. But the pass blocking has improved, the run game has improved, and I think the play calling has improved, and all of that has helped him. But it's also worth noting his pressure to sack rate, in other words, how many times when he's pressured he actually gets sacked, has dropped from 28%, which is insanely high, down to 12.5%. So it's more than cut in half, his ability to evade pressures and not get sacked. His pressure rate fell, but almost not at all. It dropped from 35% to 34%. So again, this massively improved offensive line is mostly a metric saying he was sacked a ton last year. He hasn't been sacked very much this year. But the pressures are almost identical to last year. It's just that he's not taking sacks like he did the year prior. With that said, though, he is dog crap under pressure, and so getting pressure on him is going to be important. He has an 80.3 passing grade when he's kept clean, which is 66% of the time. 2,200 yards, 7.8 yards per attempt, 3% big-time throw rate, 2.6% turnover-worthy play rate, which that in and of itself is not super impressive. But under pressure, he has a 39.6 passing grade, completing just 37% of his passes, 517 yards, 4.6 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. The other thing that's been talked about a lot is his play-action ability. Williams' QBR on play-action currently ranks 3rd in the NFL. That's actually technically not current, but it's ranked high, and it was 3rd recently. I'm not a huge QBR fan, and so when we look at his play-action passing grades, Caleb Williams is 16th with a 69.8 passing grade. So obviously play-action has worked well for the team because of the rushing ability of the team, and so I think that is something to watch out for. But I don't know that it's necessarily because Caleb is just elite under play-action. I think the passing game works really well under play-action, largely because of Ben Johnson's ability to get guys wide open. And, when they're open, Caleb can throw a 5-yard pass to an open guy who can take that for 25 yards, which is going to make the QBR, passer rating, whatever, look fantastic, especially if they get into the end zone doing that. But as far as if he's doing anything phenomenal in play-action, the answer is no. But play-action for the team, certainly something to keep an eye on, and they do it a ton. 32.2%, about a third of their passes are play action. That's 4th highest in the NFL, or I should say 4th highest among quarterbacks. Stafford does it the most, then Daniel Jones in Indy, then Marcus Mariota in Washington for whenever he happens to be the quarterback, which is not really. So you could say 3rd highest. The reality is, if you want to get a solid comp to Caleb Williams, the closest quarterback, and it's actually very similar in a lot of ways. Relatively low completion percentage, exact same number of completions, very similar number of attempts, similar yards per attempt, almost the same touchdowns, very similar big-time throw rate, similar turnover-worthy play rate, nearly identical NFL passer rating. The NFL PFF passing grades are almost identical. It's Bryce Young. Caleb Williams is Bryce Young. 396 to 363 attempts. Both have exactly 230 passing yards. Completion percentage, Bryce Young at 63%, Caleb at 58%. Caleb is insanely low in that. Yards, 2,300 to 2,700. Yards per attempt, 6.9 to 6.4. Touchdowns, 17 to 16. Interceptions, 5 to 9. Big time throw rate, 4% and 3.8%. Turnover-worthy play rate, 2.7 and 3.2. NFL passer rating, 88 and 88. It's actually 88.2 and 87.9. I mean, they are the same guy. The only real difference, Caleb Williams has an 85 rushing grade and Bryce Young has a 65 rushing grade. They are the same guy. And so again, when we talk perspective, I think a lot of people view Caleb as this elite prospect that has a little bit of inaccuracy going on, or at least is this ascending guy, or whatever it is people think. But it's the absolute closest comp is Bryce Young. The only other guy I can find that's kind of similar would be Joe Flacco. A smaller sample size, but very similar, especially when you look at turnover-worthy play and big-time throw rate. Most people are higher than Caleb, who has a relatively low turnover-worthy play rate. It's Tyler Shaw for the Saints, 6.5 to 6.9 completion rate, yards per attempt, 65% to 58%, so Shaw was way more accurate, but 3.6 to 4% on big-time throw rate, 2.6 to 2.7 turnover-worthy play rate. Tyler Shaw, 83.6 compared to Caleb Williams, 86.8 passer rating. These are his peers. Bryce Young, Joe Flacco, Tyler Shaw, Justin Fields, honestly. These are the guys that are sort of in that range, on that tier. Jackson Dart, honestly, is not a bad comparison. I know Jackson Dart has a really good reputation, so that might scare some people. But I think it's for similar reasons. Jackson Dart had an 80 rushing grade, but a 67 passing grade. He had 5.7% big-time throw rate, which is actually very high. It's actually tied with Jordan Love's. Caleb Williams at 4%, but very, very high big-time throw rate. But again, Jackson Dart, similar style of quarterback, similar abilities. Breaking news via Ian Rappaport. The Bills are placing veteran cornerback Darius Slay on the reserve/did not report list after he refused to show up in Buffalo upon being claimed, source said. Buffalo will retain his rights. What? He's just like, nah, I'm not doing that. It's cold. I'm not doing that. Anywho, running backs, they got DeAndre Swift as their starter, Kyle Monangai as their backup. We talked about Monangai had the injury thing, but that ended up being nothing as sort of thought. Monangai is sort of their rookie sensation, I guess, if you wanted to put a little extra pizzazz on it. Either way, the Swift-Monangai tandem has been pretty solid. I do think a lot of that is their offensive line, but whatever it is, it's been pretty successful. Swift and Monangai actually ran for 100 yards each, 100-plus yards each in the Week 13 game against Philly. That was the first time a Bears duo did that since Walter Payton and Matt Suhey in 1985. So these are not minor things, you know what I mean? Monangai had to step up in place of Roschon Johnson being placed on IR, so that's worked out quite well. Monangai is actually the highest graded of the two, but it's basically a tie. 77.6 rushing grade. He has 591 yards, 4.9 yards per attempt, 2.94 yards after contact, which again is an offensive line stat. I mean, that's pretty wild. He's at basically 3 yards after contact and basically 5 yards per attempt, which means he's got about 2 yards of running room before he's contacted. I don't even know what that means as a Packer fan. Almost the same for DeAndre Swift. He's at 4.8 yards per attempt, 2.79 after contact. He has a 77.4 rushing grade. Now, remember, averages are just averages. It doesn't mean that this is what they do every week, because it's not. Monangai has had some really good games and some really not good games, and like a lot of Bears guys, it's games against teams like Cincinnati and New Orleans that help to prop up some of the averages here. So, for example, his two best games on a yards per attempt basis, did come against Cincinnati and New Orleans, 6.8 yards per attempt, 6.2 yards per attempt. But Minnesota, for example, which is one of the only top 10 defenses they've faced, in Week 11, he ran for 1.9 yards per attempt, 12 attempts for just 23 yards and a touchdown. Against Dallas, it was 2.7, Baltimore 3.4, Washington 3.8. So it's not a foregone conclusion. Same for DeAndre Swift, even more so, I would say, for DeAndre Swift. In fact, when you look at the grades, it's more so. He had a 90 grade against Philly and ran for 6.9 yards per attempt. He had a 77 grade and ran for 7.7 yards per attempt against Washington. 81 grade, 6.5 yards per attempt against New Orleans. It was 68 against the Giants, 53 against Detroit, 62 against Minnesota, 60 against Baltimore, 50 against Minnesota, 46 against Pittsburgh. So the grades are definitely all over the place. And then on a yards per carry basis, 1.9 against Pittsburgh, 2.5 against Dallas, 2.7 against Las Vegas, 3.1 against Minnesota. So it's a good tandem. They're doing a lot of good stuff on average, but it's not a foregone conclusion. Packers can still shut this down. As for the wide receivers, Odunze, DJ Moore, and Luther Burden have been the three primaries. Rome Odunze obviously is out this week as their number one receiver, as has been mentioned already. There's a lot of talk from Bears fans about it's time for Luther Burden to step up. This is about Luther Burden filling those shoes and all that. I get where they're coming from. I get the feeling for them. Luther Burden is kind of like our Matthew Golden. He's the rookie guy. They really like him. They really have high expectations for him. He just isn't quite putting what they believe can be a thing in practice or in motion quite yet. With that said, Luther Burden is their slot receiver. I tend to believe that Olamide Zaccheaus will step in as the X receiver with Luther Burden staying exactly where he is. It doesn't have to be that way. Zaccheaus does play a decent amount of slot reps, so maybe Burden becomes the X receiver or some combo in between. But the point is the overarching narrative from Bears fans that this is Luther Burden needs to step up and fill that role. I think Burden's going to stay exactly where he is. Zaccheaus played in 12 games, 52 targets is actually quite high. It's third on the team, well ahead of Luther Burden. 231 yards and a touchdown, 59.6 PFF grade, which is really the biggest drop-off. Is, again, we're not looking at the difference between Odunze and Luther Burden, which they're very similar. In fact, Burden is actually graded higher. The difference is the drop-off between Odunze and Zaccheaus. 72 grade down to a 59 grade. 6 touchdowns. Odunze has been their touchdown guy. 1/3 of all the team's touchdowns. 6. The next highest is DJ Moore with 3 and Colston Loveland with 3. Zaccheaus with just 1. After that, they've got Devin Duvernay. He's mostly just a return guy, but he is now essentially next man up, so he may get a little bit of action. Pretty solid kick returner. Always has been. Bears are able to capitalize on that. Had a 56-yard kick return touchdown against the Vikings. And then after that is rookie out of Texas A&M, Jade Walker. And then at tight end, they've got primarily Colston Loveland. That is their rookie this year. Looking to be a pretty solid tight end option, actually. It was kind of a rough start early, and it was a good time laughing at him because the other tight end for the Colts was just absolutely dominating. But essentially since week 3, he's been quite good. His first 2 weeks, he graded out 51 and 47, so really bad start. He has a 77 grade, his lowest grade being a 61 against Baltimore, his highest being nearly a 90 week 3 against Dallas. Actually, his lowest overall grade was a 63.2 against Pittsburgh. So he has been a pretty solid option for the team. 31 receptions, 406 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So, I mean, look, they've got a legit tight end. They've got decent wide receivers, although their most decent is out. But they got 2 other decent options. They've got a legit running back duo. They've got a legit offensive line. They've got a legit play caller. The quarterback sucks, but it's enough there to do some damage if you aren't minding your P's and Q's. Again, like I've said before, they're too good for you to be bad and expect to win. And that's kind of been the situation so far. They've faced bad teams, and they've faced like a good team that played bad and lost. And if we show up and are sloppy, probably going to lose the game. But let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll do the offensive line, defense, and then we'll get up out of here. All right, let's take a look at their offensive line here. Start off with left tackle, because that one is at least a little bit interesting. He's a rookie second-round pick out of Boston College. He has recently taken over the left tackle spot. Jones, their longtime tackle, Braxton, not long time, but, been there for a while. Braxton Jones, their left tackle, got injured. Theo Benedette largely was their left tackle for most of the year, but the last 2 weeks, it seems like they've handed it over to Ozzie Trapillo. Trapillo, in his first time starting, maybe week 4, he kind of started, not really. His first time actually starting week 12, he had an 85 pass blocking grade and a 63 run blocking grade. It was looking super impressive and scary. Last week against Philly, though, he had a 44 pass blocking grade and a 64 run blocking grade. On the season, he has a 57 pass blocking grade and a 67.8 run blocking grade. As usual with this freaking offensive line, their run blockers are at least above average. But it is worth noting they have a rookie second-round pick with a bad pass blocking grade playing left tackle. That's something to put in the old memory bank. At left guard, they've got new guard Joe Thuney. He is playing very well. He has his entire career, basically since his rookie year in 2016, all the way through his final year last year with Kansas City, where he had a 74 run blocking grade and an 80 pass blocking grade. The pass blocking has kind of vacillated between 73 and 90. So his 86 is right on par. He has a 66 run blocking grade, which is also about on par for him. So he is a solid football player. The only, benefit here is that this is kind of artificial. Joe Thuney is 33 years old. He is not a long-term solution. They're going to have to be able to draft somebody that can play offensive line at some point. So I can concede, as we kind of all knew Joe Thuney was going to be a good football player, I can concede that he's good, but this is sort of a Super Bowl window move more so than a long-term, we're all kind of screwed sort of a move. At center, they have Drew Dahlman. Dahlman was a little bit of a surprise for me, largely because he's actually doing a very good job as a pass blocker, and that's never been a thing for him. Now, he was improving. He went from a 40 to a 55 to a 53 to a 66, so 40 to mid-50s for 2 years to mid-60s, and now is at mid-70s. So maybe he was just always trending in that way. Maybe the new offensive system, scheme, coaching staff, whatever has gotten the best out of him. Maybe it's a fluke. I don't really know. But Dahlman's 27, so he'll be able to play for a while. He is a good run blocker, always has been, and is now playing as a good pass blocker, which is unfortunate. So we'll see how that goes with him. But those two guys on the interior there, between Dahlman and Thuney, are a really good duo next to each other. Jonah Jackson, not so much. Jonah Jackson has never really been all that great. He is playing better than arguably he ever has. So again, this offensive line is clicking. Whether that's, again, kind of fluky, where there's bound to be regression here or not, I don't know. Maybe it's just because they're kind of feeding off each other or the offensive scheme, whatever. I don't know. But he has a 74 run blocking grade, which is his second best season ever. 2021 in Detroit was a 76. And he has a 67 pass blocking grade, which is not elite by any stretch of the imagination, but it is kind of by a lot his best pass blocking season. To make matters worse, since week 9, he's been very good as a pass blocker. 82, 80, 67, 73, and 68 have been his pass blocking grades. So I don't know where that's coming from. He is 29, so, there's maybe a couple years left in this. It's not really a long-term thing, but it's also probably not like a one-year deal, especially with him playing well. But again, the interior in general, just playing really good football. Now, could this just be playing bad defenses? Possibly. Remember, PFF doesn't adjust for opponent. They just grade based on, did you do a good job? Maybe, you get Micah Parsons lined up over a couple of these guys and you're going to see some bad grades. I don't know. That's obviously my hope. Jonah Jackson also was a former Lion, so he has some familiarity with Ben Johnson and that group. And then at right tackle, they've got Darnell Wright. He's in his third year and is emerging as a pretty good offensive lineman. His rookie year didn't go super great, but he immediately exploded in year two. As usual, it was primarily as a run blocker, or I shouldn't even say that. It was he's a better run blocker than pass blocker based on PFF grade. But his run blocking grade went from a 66 up to an 82. It's currently at an 80. His pass blocking grade went from a 61 to a 75. It's currently at a 74. So believe me, if I had some kind of an angle to sit here and disparage this offensive line, I would. The only thing that I have to give you, left tackle is very shaky. Left guard is very short term. Maybe the center and right guard are playing a little better than you would expect. Maybe a lot of the success is due to bad defensive play. But leaving aside all the maybes, this is up there with the best offensive line we've seen all year. It is better than Detroit's. I know Detroit gets all the praise and everything because of what they have been. And Penei Sewell is obviously great, but they also have a lot of really big deficiencies on their defensive line, more so than Chicago does. So the left tackle position is probably the only thing that keeps me from saying definitively this is absolutely the best offensive line we've seen all year. I'd have to look, and I don't really want to. Suffice it to say, very good. At the defensive tackle position, top dog starter Grady Jarrett. This was a massive swing and a miss by Chicago. Grady Jarrett has been declining since 2018, which is basically his first year being good. He, like I said, everybody's got a weird career arc. He had a good rookie year where he didn't play very much. Year two, he finally got an opportunity to start a little bit, and he was bad. Year three, he's one of the best defensive tackles in football. Does that for 3 years. Then he takes a step back, but is still good in 2020. And then just the massive drop-off begins. So starting in 2017, it's like 80, 90, 90, 80. So that's kind of like the little arc there of him being really good. After that, it's 67, 71, 68. So kind of like dropped way down to like 70, high 60s, which is a big drop-off. Then he drops to a 62 his final year with Atlanta. Chicago's like, ooh, that looks enticing at 33 years old, having by far the worst year of his career. Let's go get him. He's currently at a 53 grade. 53. So 2 years ago, he was still at like the 70 level. He dropped down to a 62 last year. He's at a 52 this year, more or less. 43 run defense grade, 60 pass rush grade, 11 pressures on 257 attempts. 11 pressures on the season. He missed some time, but dude has 11 pressures. Micah Parsons has like 7 pressures. What did he have, like 10 in a game or something? Let me look at what PFF gave him here. Yeah, he had 10 against Dallas. Grady Jarrett has 11 on the season. He's had more than 1 pressure in just 2 games. He had 2 against Detroit and 4 against Minnesota. Unfortunately, they're all divisional games, so maybe that's a cautionary tale here, but otherwise it's 1 or 0 in every other of the 9 games that he's played this season. And again, just 1 sack on the season. That was against Baltimore. He had a sack. So Grady Jarrett is officially washed. Then they got Gervon Dexter. Gervon Dexter is in year 3. He was a second-round pick. Bears fans loved the guy. They're like, this guy's legit. He's going to be amazing and all this stuff. Had a terrible rookie year. I made fun of him a lot. It was great. Year 2 looked like he was kind of exploding a little bit. He went from a 50 grade to a 70 grade overall. 30 to 60 in run defense, 65 to 67 in pass rush. Seemed like he kind of took some strides there. So far this year, he's back down to a 60 with a 44 run defense grade, 47 tackling grade, 75 pass rush, which is obviously a big improvement. But it's largely on the back of 4 games. One of them is a 93, which is where, it really skews this. And then if you just look at overall stats, he has 27 pressures on 273 attempts. So 10%, but almost, not quite. And 5 sacks on the season. And his last sack was week 10 against the Giants. In fact, through week 8, it looked like he was probably going to be having another good year. He had, most of his games were pretty solid games. Since then, his grades have been 60, 56, 50, 46, 47. So it's just going straight downhill, causing, that sort of, jump from year 1 to year 2, year 2 to year 3. Instead, it's looking like jump from year 1 to year 2 and then going back down in year 3, which again is I keep stressing this. Everybody has a unique career arc. And I bring that up because everybody always talks about, well, it's only year 1. What's he going to be like in year 3? Or, there's just this weird implicit assumption that you're bad as a rookie, you're better as a sophomore, and then your third season is when you really peak, and then you kind of hover around there, possibly get a little bit better in years 4, 5, kind of 6, and then you start to taper off. Almost nobody looks like that. There are almost 0 people who have that clean of a career arc. Nobody has that. But those are their top 2 defensive tackles, their main starters, their left and right, their 1 tech being Grady Jarrett, their 3 tech being Javon Dexter. Again, neither of them, though, not, I'm guessing actually that's not true. I was going to say, I'm guessing if you ask Bears fans, they'll still say he's a good football player. But I think they know that their defensive line kind of sucks, and that probably includes him. The number 3 guy is Andrew Billings. The defensive line has really just gotten a lot worse. So the first half of the, I'm not going to actually look it up, but the first half of the season, I would guess he had about a 65 grade. Just looking at his grades through week 7. Since week 7, this is Andrew Billings. He is now 31 years old. He's been with Chicago for 3 years. It's another thing with Chicago. When you look at how many guys they have that are really good, that are going to be here for a long time, I mean, I like their right tackle. I think that was a good hit, a good rare hit by their GM. Odunze's probably going to be pretty good. He's not really an elite player like you'd like him to be for as early as he was. He's kind of more in the where our receivers are, good, not superstar, but maybe he will be. Andrew Billings is 31 years old. Since week 7, his overall grades have been 37, 36, 76, 31, 30, 28. Aside from his 1 game against the Giants, it's been 30, 30, 30, 30, 20. That is a historic run of garbage. And this is a guy that, in 2022, prior to coming to Chicago, he was in the 70s. He's a decent football player. Then it was 66 for Chicago, 62 for Chicago, and now currently 39.6 overall. And falling. 42 run defense grade, 37 tackling grade, and a 50 pass rush grade. Holy crap. He has 5 pressures on 148 attempts. 5 pressures in a full season. I mean, and he's the number 3 guy, so he's not getting as many snaps as some of the others. How do you have 5 in a season? He's at 3.4% pressure rate. Jeez. And he's not 350. He's 310. Talking about his weight. Sometimes you get those big old nose tackles, and it's what do you expect? 3%, 5%, it doesn't matter. Basically, a pressure for those big guys is he accidentally tripped and fell in the direction of the quarterback. That's about it. 5 pressures and 0 sacks on the season for Andrew Billings. Boy, oh boy. Their 4th guy is Chris Williams. He's a 2020 UDFA. He is having by far his best season. And his grades are 57 overall, 55 run defense, 54 pass rush, 5 pressures and 0 sacks on the season, just like Billings, but with slightly less attempts. He's at, 6-7% pressure rate. He's not good. I don't know, but this has to be one of, if not the worst, defensive tackle groups in football. Terrible. Edge rushers, obviously their top dude is Montez Sweat. Sweat is, he's always been a pretty decent football player, longtime guy with Washington. He's been with Chicago now, half a year, 2023, 2024, and half a year so far this year. I didn't know how to phrase that. I don't want to say 2.5 because there's 2 halves, and I didn't want to say 2 years because that would throw everybody off because it's actually his 3rd year. Doesn't matter. It's a weird thing. But Sweat also is not what he was at his peak. His peak was 2020 through 2022. He was kind of in the 80s. His run defense was in the 80s. His pass rush was mid 70s to 80s. His best year was probably 2022 as a pass rusher, where he had 62 pressures and 8 sacks on 448 attempts. He did have 10 sacks in 2020, but full big picture, actually had 16 sacks in 2023. What the heck? But anywho, 2024, he went down to a 66 grade. He's at a 70 right now, and even that 70 is inflated because much like the rest of week 7, I don't know what happened around that time, but he hasn't had a good game since. He has a 70 overall grade, having started 60, 70, 70, 67, and 80, basically. And he's all the way down to a 70 because since then, 55, 61, 65, 60, 57, 67, and 57. Those are his grades since week 7. So he hasn't had a single good game via PFF. He has 36 pressures and 8 sacks, which, his sack numbers are always quite good. In fact, his sack numbers have been better since his grades have fallen off. He had 1 sack going into that. He has all 7 of his since then, averaging 1 sack per game. But, the pressure numbers are pretty average. The PFF grades are pretty average to subpar. His pass rush grades are actually decreasing. 60, 60, 60, 60, 50, 50, 50. Since week 9, it's 65, 61, 58, 56, and 50. So straight down for Montez Sweat. And he is also 29. Now, some guys can play until they're 35, but my guess is a guy that peaked in 2022 when he would have been, 26? It's not a great sign. Then they've got Rome Odunze, who's a 2021 second-round pick. He's He spent 4 years in Indy. It's not a great sign when you're a second-round pick, and after your rookie year, they let you go. Chicago picked him up. He's got a 54 grade, 53 run defense, 57 pass rush, 10 pressures and 1 sack on 207 attempts. He is sub 5% as an edge rusher. That's horrible. And he is arguably their number 2. I'm not exactly sure between him and Austin Booker, but they roughly have the same snaps recently. That's awful. Really bad. And then Austin Booker is a 2024 5th-round pick picked by the Chicago Bears. He is 6'6", 245, so he's really small, being 245 at that height. He's played in 5 games. His first week was week 9. He had a 90 grade. His current grade is a 58, to give you some idea of how bad it's been. 58 overall, 53 run defense, 54 tackling, 62 pass rush. He has 9 pressures and 1 sack on 160 attempts. So, I don't know, 6%-ish. Really quite bad. So, outside of Montez Sweat, who is, I would probably put him on more the Rashawn Gary tier of not elite, but solid. Outside of that, this is a horrible defensive line. At linebacker, they've got a pretty significant loss here. The guy's been bad his entire career. You've heard me talk about it 1,000 times. Tremaine Edmonds. He was terrible in Buffalo, had 1 good year. Chicago jumped all over it. He was bad in 2023, bad in 2024 for Chicago, but this year he's having a bit of a resurgence. 72 grade, 86 run defense, 78 tackling. Coverage not great, but as a run defender and whatnot, he was looking real good. He also had 8 pressures and 2 sacks on the season on his 55 attempts. So he was playing some pretty good football. He got hurt. He got sent to IR with a groin injury. There is an expectation of his return for Week 16, which would be our next matchup. But for this game, he is officially out, obviously. So that ends up actually being a relatively big deal. That puts TJ Edwards and Noah Sewell as their top two linebackers. TJ Edwards, he has actually only played 5 games this season. He did not play Week 1, he played Week 2. Then he was out all the way to Week 6, played Week 6, 7, 8, 9, and then went out again, and was limited this week in practice, full on Friday, and is good to go for this game. So this is going to be his first game back since Week 9. He does have a 75 overall grade, but really that's based on 2 games, Week 6 and 7 from Washington and New Orleans. His other games are 65, 50, and 52, which were his last 2 games that he played. He had a 50 and 52 overall, 50 and 60 run defense, and then 49 and 50 coverage. So his last 2 games were actually terrible. But obviously that doesn't... It's a small sample size across the board. I think the biggest thing is the fact that he's been injured so many times and for so long. I don't know that you're going to get his best shot his first week back, and that's assuming he can even stay healthy throughout. Because TJ Edwards is a pretty good linebacker. He always has been. He was a good linebacker with Philly. I said when they got him the same year that they got, Tremaine Edmonds, that this was actually the better pickup, and I think it absolutely was. But he is having some serious injury issues. He is 29 years old, so again, he's maybe got a couple years left. We'll see what he's going to be able to do. And then the other guy is Noah Sewell. Sewell is terrible. He's getting his first opportunity to actually start this year. Despite this being his 3rd year, he was picked in the 5th round for Chicago in 2023. He has a 41 PFF grade, 71 run defense, which is pretty solid, although that's on the back of 4 pretty good games. Outside of that, 40, 60, 40, 60, 40. His last 3 games have been 40, 60, 40 in run defense. So sometimes he's pretty good, but a lot of times he's a freaking disaster. He has a 34 tackling grade. He has a 42 pass rush grade and a 29 coverage grade. He has 2 games in the 60s, and that's it, as far as his what you could call good games. Otherwise, it's 30, 50, 30, 40, 20, 40, 30. He has a sub 10% pressure rate as a linebacker, which is pretty wild. His missed tackle rate is 21%, with 14 missed tackles. He's been targeted 29 times. 24 of those were caught for 215 yards. He's given up 3 touchdowns, 0 picks, 0 pass breakups, 132.0 passer rating when targeted. So, defensive line, terrible. Linebackers, depending on if TJ Edwards can come back and actually look good, kind of terrible. It's a rough friggin' group. At corner, they've got 2 guys that are kind of their staple guys that are returned from IR. Both of them came back November 22nd, or designated return, or whatever that case was. Both of them are in their 2nd game back, and that's Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon. There's a lot of hype about how elite this defense is going to be now that these guys are back. I think that ignores several things. Number 1 is your defensive tackles suck. Number 2 is your edge rushers suck. Number 3 is your linebackers suck. Aside from that, Kyler Gordon, I think there's a lot of hype about how good he is. 2022 2nd-round pick. He had 1 good year in 2024. Now, maybe that means that he's just going to keep getting better, right? He got better from year 1 to year 2 to year 3. Okay, great. What does that mean for year 4? Don't know. What I do know is that he's been hurt, and on the season he has a 59 grade and a 62 coverage grade in the 3 games that he's played. It's not a fantastic showing so far. He's their slot corner, by the way. Jalen Johnson played week 2, so he missed week 1, played week 2, has been out ever since, came back week 13, and had a 49 grade, 47 coverage grade, right? First week back is rough. Also, similarly, the idea that Jalen Johnson is just this elite corner, I mean, he spent 3 years being not good. 2023, he was maybe the best corner in football. He got a massive paycheck. 2024, he fell off. Not terrible, but he was in the 60s, went up to the 90s, and then went back down to the 70s. Because you know why? Nobody stays all the way up there. That's something that, for whatever reason, nobody seems to want to ever admit. And now, his second year removed from his elite season, he hasn't played all year, and in his 2 games overall has a 58 grade and a 57 coverage grade. Maybe this is his big bounce back. I don't know, but it hasn't looked great. It didn't look good against Philly. Let's put it that way. And then presumably their other corner is going to be Nahshon Wright. He was a 3rd-round pick by the Cowboys in 2021. He has a 62 grade, 62 coverage grade. So that's what he is. So of their 3 corners, how many of them have been good at any point or recently or whatever? 0 of them. It's not to say that they can't, but the idea that, oh, we're good now because they're back, yeah, no, not so much. And then their safeties, they got Jaquan Brisker, which is hilariously, for some reason, just when he got drafted, he was just going to be the greatest thing. He's elite. He's all these things. He's never been good, and he's gotten worse every year. His grades in his 4 years overall, 67, 66, 65, and this year, 61. His coverage grades, 65, 62, 64, and 49.9 this year. Definitely more of a run defender / tackler, but, I mean, when your coverage is that bad, it doesn't really matter. You can't just be like, well, it's not really his. Yes, it is. That is going to be your job as a DB to some degree. Kevin Byard is the guy that they went out and picked up in 2024. Byard was with Tennessee for a long time. He spent half a year with Philly in 2023 and Chicago the last 2 years. He's always been a pretty good safety. Coverage is very up and down. Actually, he's quite good in coverage this year. But usually more run defense tackling type of guy. But again, he's 32, so he's just another one of those guys, along with half this football team, that's going to be on the way out pretty soon. And so Chicago is kind of going to be stuck in this Minnesota cycle, where you're not going to have a choice but to go out and pay a bunch of people every single year. And so you're probably going to have these fluctuating years. Some years you're going to be really good because we got a good batch, and then some years we're going to be terrible because we got a bad batch. And you're really going to try to do very good in those very good years because it's really the only way we're going to get out of this cycle. I mean, the only actual way out is to draft and develop and just slowly try to add a bunch of people that way. But they're not. I don't think they're going to be able to do that, especially considering how many people are going to be leaving. You can't draft that well that fast. So this is why the defense is as bad as it is. I mean, they're just bad players. But, Kevin Byard has 6 interceptions. Nahshon Wright has 5 interceptions. Dude is not a good corner, but he managed to get 5 interceptions. Tremaine Edmonds, who's out, has 4 interceptions, which is kind of crazy. When you look at it, it's really just 3 guys that have gotten all the interceptions. Otherwise, Brisker and Tyreek have 1. But, Kevin Byard, 6 interceptions. Tremaine has 4, and again, he's not playing, so now you remove 4 from that list. So it's kind of Kevin Byard and Nahshon Wright that are the 2 pick guys. And, they get a bunch, but, I mean, again, it's so funny that it's when people want to believe that this stuff is real. Nahshon Wright has 5 interceptions, right? This is not fluky. This is just because of talent or because of emphasis or whatever. Do you know how many interceptions he has in his career? He's played football for 4 years. He has 6. Granted, in the 3 years, it adds up to about as many as he's played this year. But this is, I mean, it's not real. It's just not. Nahshon Wright has done this before in the past. Again, very good safety. But it's not a thing that a guy just does all the time. His rookie year, he had 0. Then he had 8. Then he had 4. Then he had 6. Then he had 1. Then he had 5, then he had 4, then he had 1, then he had 1, then he had 6. This is why people talk about it as though it's not reliable, because it's not reliable. Matt LaFleur talked about, well, they emphasize it, and that's why they get that result. Bull crap. First of all, most teams emphasize it. Second of all, we are a team that emphasizes it. And you know what? We got a bunch of picks up until the point when we stopped. And now this year, we're actually really bad at it. Because, it's not to say that emphasis doesn't matter. It's not to say that skill doesn't matter, because they both do. But there's just a lot of fluctuation. You know what I mean? Like a guy that gets a lot of picks might fluctuate between 1 and 8. A guy that doesn't get a lot of picks will fluctuate between 0 and 2. But there's just going to be these massive fluctuations no matter what, which is why it's not something you can count on. And again, you can doubt it as much as you want, but go find any example of any player or any team that is just consistently taking the ball away for long periods of time. Good luck. It's not to say the Bears won't do it against us. It's just explaining the thought process behind it. All right, I'm out of here. Y'all have a good rest of your day. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
The Bears still suck. The Bears still suck. The Bears still suck. The Bears still suck. They really, 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 really suck. Yes, the Bears still suck. Feel silence, that's your destiny. 100 years of history, nothing left to show. We own the frozen tundra, you just shovel snow. You talk that talk in the off season, but every fall you learn the lesson. The Bears still suck. Bears still suck. Lombardi trophies we don't share. Bears still suck. Green and gold nightmare. You can run, but you can't hide from this title town pride. The Bears still suck. Oh carousel keeps spinning around. Another draft pick wasted, face down on the ground. We raised the bar so high you'll never reach. Lambeau, sacred ground, stay off our beach. Come on. Talk that talk every single season. September comes, you're begging for a reason. The Bears still suck. Bears still suck. Lombardi trophies we don't share. The Bears still suck. Green and gold nightmare. You can't run, but you can't hide from this title town pride. The Bears still suck. 61-7. Remember that December. Every single meeting, another loss to remember. The Bears still suck. Bears still suck. Lombardi trophies we don't share. Bears still suck. Green and gold